Hi friend, it's your host Emily Matheson and welcome to New York Transplants, the podcast. On this podcast, I connect with other transplants to better understand how can we find human connection and build community in this concrete jungle. As a mental health expert, I am always looking for new ideas and tools to support my sense of belonging and well-being. That's why I am leaning on my guests and asking for their advice on how I and you can nurture our New York roots. So what are you waiting for? Come and get rooted with us. Hi friends. So I'm currently reading The Art of Community by Charles Vogel. And in his book, Vogel shares the 7 principles that community leaders should consider when creating strong, meaningful, and lasting communities. As I've been reading this book, I can't help but think of the qualities and journeys of this week's guest. On today's episode, I am talking with Josh Pugh, or better known as America Josh. Josh is a fellow Aussie who moved to New York in 2017. And over the last 7 years, he has earned the reputation as the go-to guy for anyone looking to move to New York City, or America more broadly. His website, America Josh, is full of incredible resources that provide step-by-step guidance on how to navigate the financial, residential, and social logistics associated with uprooting your life. I've been thinking about Josh a lot as I read The Art of Community because being a community leader is not easy, but there's a unique quality about good leaders that become quickly evident within a few minutes of speaking to them. And Josh is one of these people. He genuinely cares and thinks deeply about how he can serve his community. This includes things like creating consistent spaces, both digital and in person, where people can connect. After all, you need consistency to create familiarity and familiarity to create community. Josh has this participant-centered approach to creating community, and this is evident throughout our conversation. And he has some amazing insights into what can make or break a New York transplant experience. So without further ado, let's get rooted with America Josh. Josh Pugh, welcome to New York Transplants, the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to firstly congratulate you because you have fostered such an amazing community for expats, both Aussies and other nationalities, through America Josh. And it feels like 2024, there's been quite a bit of focus on your community and really showcasing what you've created. Is that correct?
It is. No, thank you. It's this year has really been one where it's come into its own. It's worked out what it is. I think I had some real ideas for what I wanted it to become, and I put the sort of pieces in place. And obviously 2020 changed everything, and 21 evolved it. 22 sort of I had a plan in place, and 23 was growing that. It's amazing how time flies by, but it's now it's got a rhythm. I've employed Julie who runs all of our events, and she's absolutely sensational. So it's kind of it knows what it is a little bit more. It's grown up.
Yeah. So tell me, what motivated America Josh and how has it evolved since you first started it to present day?
Yeah. So I moved here to New York in 2017. And when I first got here, there was plenty of information. If you Google how to do something, you will find endless documents and people writing things. A lot of the time I found that the information was outdated. It didn't necessarily reflect my story. It didn't maybe have the details that I wanted, or it would speak from a sort of 30,000 foot view of like you should get an account, you should get a bank account, you should get Social Security. And for me, what I wanted was an actual like go to bank, walk in, say X, hand over document Y. And so I spent my first 3 months sort of bumbling through and working out my own story. And then in my 4th month, I sort of realized that there were all these questions that were being asked, and they were the same questions by everyone. Everyone gets here and has the same kind of list of probably 9 or 10 things that you need to check off when you first get here. So I have a background in websites, and I thought I'm going to write it down, and I made a blog. And it very much started as just this idea of like, here's what I did today. Here's the example of something that like my good one was I went into a bank and I met a guy, Legrand, and Legrand got it, and he told me all the information that I needed to ask, and he made me hand over the documents and he let me write down notes and all these tiny little pieces that sort of built up to having a knowledge. And it wasn't coming from a space of like an expert. It was coming from the space of someone who's doing it.
Yes.
And I think that's where I really like found an audience. It was not that I was telling people, here's what you don't know. It's like, I don't know, and let's learn together.
Yes.
So
I love that. And I love that 30,000 foot analogy, because the same thing can be said with community. The Times have done so many articles of late around the concept of loneliness and how we're in a loneliness epidemic and how to create community. And literally it's the same, 4 or 5 suggestions. Join a sports club.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so disparaging and in terms of when you're feeling lost and feeling helpless and where do I start, you want concrete examples for how to do the thing, because that just helps with motivation, helps with certainty and that anxiety.
It gives you that first step. I completely agree. I think we have this habit, and businesses now sort of talk to me about, they've got their own employees and staff and things, and they've always got like, we have a mission to join our staff and make sure that they're taken care of, but they don't have, so today we're going to drinks, today we're going to the baseball, today we're like going to meet for lunch, we're going to talk about this thing, and they sort of think they do because they've put people in the same room and they've talked about it conceptually, or the articles that come out, but people actually want to be told, like, when I arrive, do X, actually go do a thing, or here's a tangible something to follow. So what we've tried to do with America Josh is we do have weekly coffee. So every Friday morning at 10:30 since, so it was during COVID, I think it was about October 2020. I started going to coffee in the East Village on Fridays at 10:30 in the morning. And the idea was that I will be there every single Friday at 10:30. Yes. So it was my dog and I at the time, and he was a little puppy, so I carried him because he wasn't allowed on the street. And I rolled up 10:30 every morning. And the first one, nobody came because who the hell am I? The second one, like one person might have popped by. But over the time we've had now, we get up to, 50, 60 people at it. Sometimes it's still just me and my son.
Yes.
But it's this consistency, and it's saying like, become part of the community. And the first thing you get to do is come to coffee.
Yes.
Like you just come speak to me. Like at the very least, you'll have someone that in the first week you can come chat to. More than likely, it's going to be me and a handful of other people, and you can share a story and you can have a bit of a whinge. That's I think my big sort of secret has been that, like, having a bit of a complaint, not focusing on the negatives by any stretch, but allowing yourself to be like, oh, this week it got to me, hard. Or it is hard. This moving to a big city is it's difficult.
And I have been a beneficiary of the Friday morning coffees, and I think it was really interesting because I had seen your content for probably the last 12 to 18 months, and it was part of the knowing that it was there. Yes. And, being able to go, and when I was in my dark place in January this year, it was, okay, what are some steps what are some easy wins that you can help with that sense of, helplessness or loneliness. Yep. And I remember when I did the first coffee and I was thinking, why didn't I do this sooner? And I was, part of me was frustrated, but then equally I was like, no, like, you did it. That's the win.
This week has been a success.
Exactly. Yes. And I think just going into the weekend with like, okay, I did that for myself and for my sense of community. And there was just something so comforting about hearing accents, hearing relatable stories, also the different lengths of time that people have been here for. There was a gentleman there that had been here for 20 years and was still coming for coffee. And so I think that is what's so important about the coffee is the consistency. Yes. Because I think with some of the events that are offered in New York, it can feel like, a splash in the pan. And
spring,
it's like,
summer comes and suddenly everything's happening.
Exactly. And then the winter season's everyone kind of hibernates, but it's, it's not consistent, and you need consistency to build familiarity, and you need familiarity to build community. Yes. And I think kudos to you for to be able to keep showing up for people, because that takes a lot of time and energy to do that.
No, it does. And I love, this is what I love doing. I love meeting people. I genuinely, I get asked all the time, does America just make lots of money? And it's like, no, it doesn't. But I genuinely get a joy out of it. And I'm proud that we've sort of turned it into a little bit of a business, and it's growing. But that was never the point. It was really meant to be the consistency, especially during COVID. We really highlighted just how much people wanted to know that if they looked to my website or if they looked to Friday mornings, they knew there'd be something there. As you know, that's what consistency is. It really is this idea that you can trust that they'll be there, they'll have the answer. And again, I think your point is really great. You don't move, and I wrote about this recently, you don't move all the way across the planet to meet people with the same accent as you, but you don't realize how much that comforts you. And even if you don't do it often, or if you are just fleetingly, you pop in for one and you don't come back for a year, it does give you a sense of familiarity. It gives you, even if you don't consider yourself, Australian and rah, it still is something that's part of your makeup. It's part of your story. It's part of what makes you feel happy and rested and relaxed. And you don't have to think about the sort of airs that you need to put on or the face that you put on each day if you're living and working professionally in a big city.
So true.
So it's all these tiny little pieces that add up to a sort of happy life, and we're never going to perfect it, but the little movements in the right direction help.
100%. In terms of the resources on your website, one of the things I find most overwhelming with moving and navigating a new country are the government procedures and logistics. And I think part of the thing that makes it most overwhelming is fear of making a mistake.
Sure.
Because if you make a mistake, there's sometimes financial or time consequences.
Or longer term, it can impact your whole life.
Exactly. You're leaving. You have to, you can no longer stay in the country. How do you search for, vet, and keep on top of all the information and then so beautifully package it for the consumer and for the community?
No, thank you. It is one of the most sort of terrifying. I'm not an immigration lawyer.
Yeah.
So it's the one thing I write all over the website and all over our emails. We make sure that people know that we are not professionals in this space, and you should always seek a professional.
Absolutely.
That all being said, my dirty little secret is I like red tape. I actually really like the logistics of little step-by-steps, granular ways of, and I've realized for a lot of these governmental things and a lot of the process-driven stuff, the information is all there. It's somewhere. It's in 10 different places, and it requires really slowly but surely going through it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time we have the habit of when we're writing a guide or something, we'll sort of say and then you go to the website and you work it out. But you don't then yourself as the writer log into the website, try and register an account. Realize that when you try to register, it requires an email that is different from so it really has been about I try and do as much as I possibly can myself. So I've gotten 2 E3 visas in this country. I've gone and transitioned to a green card through marriage. So I've done the step-by-step. Yeah. So there are some parts of the website that are especially detailed because I have done and the other part is that, and what we've done is because I can't get all of the visa types that we write about, we talk to the community. So the give and take of the community has been amazing. And the reason that we've been successful is because we've written the stuff that we know, which has then grown our reputation in some spaces. But then what we've said is hey, I don't know about J1 visas, for example. We're writing something at the moment. And I know that another organization, Rachel from Grow USA, is amazing. She's kills J1s. So I reached out to her only a few weeks ago and said, you know this space way better than I do. I don't want to take over your space, but we could drive traffic to your website. If you can provide me some resources, we will. And it's this sort of back and forth.
Yes.
And then we talk to the people that have got J1s and they say, I did that, but it actually didn't work like that because there's this roadblock that nobody tells you about, or there's this little sentence in this paragraph actually makes a huge impact. So it's really about listening, which I know it's always sort of the obvious one, but it's so important. We found to go to coffee and hear people's stories. And I sort of at the end of coffee, I sometimes sort of write a few things down about what people have said. I just went to Rome and Rome's really difficult at the moment because visas are difficult. So then we'll go to the website and we'll update the website to say Rome is a bit more difficult than it used to be. Yeah. All these little tiny pieces. And again, nothing, I think emphasizing most importantly that nothing is too small, because the little bit of advice that is only particular to 1 or 0.1% of our audience, there's going to be 0.1% of our audience that says that's exactly the question that I was looking for an answer to. And that helps me immensely because I didn't know if I was different from everyone else.
Yeah. And there's nothing like going down a Reddit rabbit hole looking for that one piece of information or going to, I remember when Dan and I were going through our green card experience, the first piece of advice that our lawyer gave us was do not go on the websites. Yes. Do not go down a Reddit rabbit hole. Like, I will walk you through this process. That is what you pay me for. Yes. And that is how I will support you. But it is so easy when there's that pressure because you are wanting to stay somewhere and you want to feel grounded and rooted, and there feels such an immense amount of pressure to get it right.
Yes.
And there is a lot of money at stake when you are, either going through a lawyer front or just the application and, process, if you're doing it on your own, can be costly. So yeah, I think it is, you feel so much pressure to do it right and to do it well.
You do. And I think I was talking to someone about this just yesterday and saying, and I know I keep bringing up COVID, but it was such a huge part of the development. But during that time, there was a lot of talk of why don't you just come home, and things have happened in politics in the US, and people say, why don't you just come home? And I think there's a minimization of just how much goes into moving your life and setting up a life and establishing that you've now got a life in another country.
Yes.
It's not a radial version. It's not the, the whistle stop on a journey to come eventually back home for everyone. In my case, like I will be in the US most likely forever. So this is a big part of my life. So I don't have the option. I can't lift up my now, 9-month-old son, my dog, my lease still goes. I have a business here. I can't just leave. And I think emphasizing, the stakes are high.
Yes.
If you get it wrong, there are massive implications, because for example, if my green card failed and I wasn't able to stay here, what does my wife do? Yes. What does my son do? What does what does my business do? It is not something that you can say, well, you just, I don't know, go back home and do something different. It is, the stakes are so high.
Yes.
And I never want to minimize just how important, like even if people say I'm going to be here only for 2 years, or that's still 2 years of your life where you've got to set everything up and you've got to get everything in line. It is fundamentally important to who you are as a person. So we really try not to minimize any of it.
I really appreciate that. And it was actually a question I was going to ask you later, but it fits so perfectly now. A really common conversation that I have with other transplants is let's say it's curiosity, but then can sometimes feel like pressure from family or friends when they are back in their native country, or for American transplants who go back to their home city here. There's this curiosity, and it usually happens within the first day of arriving, and people say, so when do you see yourself coming back, or how long are you going to be out there for? Have you experienced that curiosity and pressure? Naturally.
Yep.
And how have you navigated it, and do you have any advice for transplants on how to navigate those conversations with friends and family?
It is possibly the hardest part. I mean, it's so obvious that moving away from friends and family is going to be the hardest part of moving. I definitely have got it. I know when I first moved, I was very clear with my friends and family that it might be for 3 months, it might be for 3 years, it might be, I don't know. So for me, I didn't set, I think one of the sort of first tips would be, don't set yourself a hard target.
Yes.
Unless there is some impetus or some reason or some very specific reason why you have to do that.
Yep.
I would say, have in your mind that, this is a 2-year jaunt and I want to come back, or it might be, I want to go away forever, or it might be something in between. Have that in your mind. I think setting expectations is always difficult, and saying like, you're going to roll with it a little bit, which is tough to hear if you're from your home country. I know I sort of found some of my friends especially were sort of like, but aren't you happy? Like, why are you leaving us? And it's so hard because I had like in my story, I don't have any reason to leave. There was nothing pushing me out. I had a wonderful life and I loved all my friends and I love all my family, but I wanted to do something exciting and new. So I said to them, I'm going to go away and I don't know what's going to happen. And some of them at the beginning said, oh, how long for? And I said, look, I don't know. And then as time goes on, you will find that some of them will keep saying that. And I think you've just kind of got to let that happen. There are some people just will never understand why you would up and leave. Even if in my case, I've now been here almost 8 years and I've got a family and I've built up everything and I've got everything. And they still say like, why are you doing this? It's like, well,
Yeah.
now I've found like what I was looking for.
Yes.
So, and then some, I think there's sort of that three groups. There are some that then eventually, some immediately realize it and understand. They're like, go. Like I had one, my old housemate, she'd moved abroad once and come back because she wanted to.
Yeah.
And she got it. She was like, pack your bags. This is going to be amazing. You're going to love
Yeah.
every minute. And she's been immensely supportive the whole way through because she's like, I understand.
Yes.
There are some people that it takes a little while and you can accept that, especially your parents and things, because they're like, you know, we'll miss you. We'd like to see you more. And you just have to like be supportive and say like, I don't know what my next step is, but I still will be back, and, you know, I'll be back twice a year or I'll be back once a year. And there are some that you just have to probably say like, I'm going to hear it from you forever that, you know, when are you coming back, or why did you leave? And it's not about them. It's about, you know, are you happy? Unfortunately, that will mean that some friends become harder to like speak to, and some you'll have to sort of drop off from. But that is the most fundamentally hard part of your life moving. It's the fact that you will have to sever ties with people that you had great relationships with and close relationships with. In some case, you'll do it actively and you'll say like, I can't do this anymore. But other times it's just, you miss milestones, you miss, you know, kids, and you miss birthdays, and you miss the party and the story that came with and you'll become the friend that comes back once a year and you have a high five and it's great, but you're not there for everything. So it's, I think once you start really talking about it, you realize like this is it's not a small decision to up and leave your life. And if you've decided to do that, there will be elements and people that don't like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed that for some people, one of those buckets, it's a conversation starter and they might not know how to articulate, I miss you.
Yes.
And I miss you being a part of the everyday life that we used to have. And so what I've gotten into the habit of doing is saying that is, you know, I can hear you miss me and I miss you too.
Yeah. Yep.
And, you know, even just acknowledging that sometimes. And I think the difficulty with that futuristic thinking of when are you coming home? You know, how long do you see yourself out there? It really takes away from spending the time that you have with each other.
Yes.
And let's enjoy this,
like
the
I'm
time and space, you know, that quality time that we have. But yeah, I think it is one of the most common conversations that I've had with other transplants of, you know, that curiosity and that pressure and how it can detract from that moment that you're spending with them.
Absolutely. And that is so important because it's one of the hardest, like I wrote an article about when you go visit home, it's not like just sort of, it's not easy. It's not as easy as I thought it would be to be able to go back for a couple of weeks and high five everyone and be like, oh my God, it's so good to see you, and leave. For starters, you always disappoint every single person because you never see them enough. Even if you spend, you know, and as you said, you spend a whole day, you're like, I put aside all of Saturday from breakfast through the end of like dessert and drinks, and we'll go out and we'll have a fun time. And they'll say like, oh, well, what else? When can we see you again? And it's like, well, no, this was I feel so terrible because I don't ever want anyone to think that like I don't value when people are so desperate to see me, because it's so lovely when people say that. But it is tough because there are other people. You know, my mum says the same thing to me. She's like, where are you? Well, you know, why aren't you spending dinner here every night?
Yes.
So it is about appreciating the time you've got together and planning not only to see, you know, to check off lists and do some group, like we always say, do group events and try and like group a few things together so you can see at least a couple of people at once and give them one at the start, one at the end, but also like planning you time because it's not a holiday. And if you're in the US, you don't get much time off. So you might have 2-3 weeks a year, 4 weeks a year, if you're lucky. And you're spending that entire time visiting friends and family, which is totally worth it. But that will mean that is your holiday. That is your vacation time done. So my wife and our tip was that we land somewhere that's not my hometown of Adelaide. And we do at least a weekend, if not a little bit longer. So we flew into Melbourne a couple of times ago and we drove the Great Ocean Road.
Beautiful.
So we spent sort of 4 or 5 nights just doing our own thing, plodding along. We went out for, you know, nothing nights and went out for dinner, the two of us, and we was sort of a date night for 5 nights. And then landed in Adelaide and we are ready. We are so excited about seeing everyone, and we spent every back-to-back day and night. We didn't overplan it. We, you know, didn't fill every single gap, but all of these little tips that you start to learn and make the trip worth it, because otherwise, you do feel like when you leave, you don't want to leave thinking you've disappointed everyone by leaving again. And you don't want to feel like nobody got valuable time with you. And I desperately wish I could like stay for longer or have them all visit me unfortunately there's just, you did leave. So like, you've got to accept that like you made a hard decision, and some sort of, to your point before, some people really anchor in the place they were born, or I've got friends that got married at like 18 and they're still married and they've got kids and they're super happy. And I am envious, like jealous of how happy they've always been with that concept.
Yeah.
It wasn't me.
Yes.
So I've accepted that. That was never going to be me. I've made this decision to move. You got to take the good with the bad.
Yes. And I resonate with that. Resonates with me so much. I think because I'm torn, because I think that I was very much a homebody when I was younger.
Yes.
We both grew up in Adelaide, and I think when we were kids, a lot of people referred to it as a sleepy city.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I love Adelaide.
So I'm such a huge advocate. I think Adelaide's one of the best places on earth.
One of the most aesthetically beautiful cities, some of the best beaches in the world. Dan laughs at me because I always have the same pitch. It's like it's surrounded by 3 of the internationally renowned wine regions and like food and wine festivals, and just a beautiful population size, and it has so many things to offer. And I think part of me has that identity of I could see myself being in Adelaide,
sure,
but also then I just am so energized by living abroad and, working abroad and having an international relationship. So it to have those two identities and that push-pull between the two.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still navigating where that lands, but I think the two things can be true. It's just how do you find a balance with either going back home, both are home now, but going back to Adelaide for extended periods of time to fill that bucket.
Yep.
And then, I say it's kind of, I get the best of both worlds. I get the Adelaide oasis, and then I get the beautiful chaos that is New York.
Yes,
and so to be able to go between those two, there's definitely cons to it, but I can't think of two better cities to go between.
Couldn't agree more. No, I really couldn't, because I think Adelaide has worked out, like you said, growing up it was the small one. It was and I think Adelaide knows what it is now.
Yes.
I think it is, nobody in Adelaide says, very few people I think say, I want it to be a bigger city. I want it to be more hustle bustle. And the people that want that will go find it, and they'll go to Sydney or Melbourne, or they'll move overseas. But for the people in Adelaide, I get it. And I've got a newfound appreciation for just how much it's got its sort of stuff worked out. It knows that it is a city that will be smaller, but in today's day and age, you can work online, you can be anywhere, and you can drive. I love that, 20 minutes from the hills to the beach and the everything in between. It's got a value. It knows what it is. And I think that's sort of understanding that about myself and knowing that that is fantastic. And I love visiting, and I love seeing how much it's changed over time when I'm gone, and the people that live there say, well, nothing, it's all the same. It's like, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah.
You have no idea. When you go away for a year each time and come back, you get to see just how much has changed. And having an appreciation for that has made me love like Adelaide more, but also really highlight to me that I don't want to live there. That is, which is, it's not the people. Again, it's like I don't have a thing that I can tangibly say, this is why.
Yeah.
I love the fact that I can walk out into First Avenue and go to a different place every day. And it's that for me is what I find value in, and what I've found with my wife. We both like to explore a new location or a new bar or a restaurant. And I think if we went to any other city, almost, once you've lived in New York, it really is, it's so much bigger and so much denser than so many other places that I think we'd struggle. And I like that I've kind of acknowledged that this is just part of my identity now. It's part of the pieces that make up who I am.
And I think that helps with conversations. That's not going to sit well with everyone, but to have that self-assurance and know what you want, that's half the battle.
It is.
And especially
some
when
people never find that, which is so tough. You see people, I know, but like I see people move here. One really good story is that when I first moved here in America, Josh was in its first year. We had someone sign up, and they had dreamed of living in New York forever. And they had posters, and like from birth, they had this idea that New York was the pinnacle. And they got here and hated it. And it's so tough seeing someone who clearly is sort of disassociating with this idea of like, this is what I did it. I got to New York and I hate it. And one of the biggest tips that I always try to give people, especially when they just arrive, is you might not like it, and it's fine.
Yes.
Like if you push it you need to push it for a period because
Yeah.
there is a 3-month high and then
Yes.
there's a 3-month low and then there's like a bumpy first, like your first year
Yeah,
is all over the
100%.
place. And you'll find days that you are like, I love this city. It's a warm day. It's spring. You're walking down the street and like someone hands you a hot dog. And, it's like, and there's another day where you step in a puddle and then like you miss the train and you're late for the thing. And all those tiny little bits add up to how you perceive it. So accepting like that you might not like it. And this person basically decided like after a few months, it's like, I can't do this, but then found in LA like home, like totally got it. And I think the concept that you need to understand is that like it's, you can't build it up too much. You need to sort of roll with the punches a little bit more and accept that your life, some people might find it like I got here and was like almost immediately, I was like, this is it. I've worked it out. This was right. But if that doesn't feel right after a few months, then adapt because you will fight yourself and you'll hate yourself in 2 years if you're sitting here going like, I still hate it. What am I doing? And unless you've got a plan, it's not going to get better. It's not going to change.
No, and you have to be proactive. I think allow yourself to have that moment to wallow and that pity party. I love a good pity party.
Absolutely. Be sad.
Yeah.
Be sad.
Be
like,
sad.
Embrace it. Eat the ice cream.
Put a clock on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, and I think that's what's important is like allow yourself to be frustrated with the challenges, but then, okay, what are the small incremental changes that I can make?
Yep.
Because if you don't change anything, nothing changes.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this city is whilst it's beautifully chaotic, there are so many communities that have their arms open to you.
Yes.
It's you do just have to do a little digging first to try and find it. And the expectations that you might have had originally, might be completely, thrown out the window because it's like, oh, this isn't the version that I had in mind, but there might be an even better version around the corner. One of my questions for you is, how has your concept of community changed? Thinking about what community you had in Adelaide, but also since starting America, Josh.
I think the biggest thing I've realized is how over time you lay roots and how long it takes to foster relationships, to foster that sense of self and community and part of a whole. I think the biggest thing for me was that when I moved, I didn't realize how much I was part of a community already. Like I was very lucky. I grew up in a lovely area in Adelaide and I lived in that same area for my entire life. And I had friends I went to the same school from start to finish. So I had the same friends and they're still my closest friends. And I then picked up some uni friends and and it happens over 30 years. It happens. And I think what I didn't value quite so much is just how much work passively goes into building your nest. Like you sort of you flesh this out and you might have a home, you might have a house, you might have bought something and that feels like, now I've got roots down. But really like all of those little winding bits that link you to, spaces and places and people in your community, in your home, even if you didn't realize you're already there. So when I got here, I kind of thought, well, I've been lucky. I love meeting people and I've made friends easily. But I didn't realize how much went into actually like fostering community, fostering like a sense of home and building that nest again, because you don't have, I use the example of if you have a really crappy day, you want to be able to text that close friend or a particular friend about particular memes or particular friends. And you can text the ones from home, you can, but they're asleep. It's the middle of the night.
Exactly.
So you don't realize how much goes into building like the little connections, the micro bits that, I've got one friend that particular types of stupid jokes really resonate with him and another friend really likes hearing about the business and wants to talk about that. And I think it is how much time and energy goes into community. And those sort of, like we talked about before, the tangible parts of it. So it is really about the like what goes into building that. And I've had friends, like I've always been someone that sort of fosters friends and connects people. It's just sort of who I am. And when I left, I had some people reach out and say like, oh my God, since you've gone, like we don't get together anymore. And how much I think it does require, some people have to be more active. And I think it's always beneficial if everyone puts in a little bit to try. Because the best part of community when you find an audience or find a community abroad is that you've all got a common problem. You've all moved, like you started with, you've all just moved your entire life. So you have to have your arms open a little bit and be accepting of the fact that everyone's in the same boat a little bit. we just ran the Big Aussie Barbecue, and that is sort of this idea of like putting everyone in the same spot, and you've all had the same something in common. You don't have to be Australian, but you are probably from somewhere else, or you've probably gone through the problems. You might have been here 20 years and you haven't faced getting a bank account in years, but you understand that it's difficult broadly, and having that sort of compassion and having that similarity or familiarity with the problems that people face, and being welcoming to like letting people complain a little bit and saying like, oh, I've been there, gives you a chance to connect on a deeper level and plant those roots more quickly. And I think that's the sort of what we're trying to foster at America Josh, is trying to work out ways that we can find commonalities and link people with buddies and build those roots, because getting some real deep ones early can make or break how long you can stay, how long you'll be happy, and it can foster like a deeper relationship with the country or the city or and without those little bits, you will never feel, you'll always feel like you've just sort of moved. You feel like you're away from home. Whereas once you've done that, you'll suddenly realize you've got a home abroad, or this might be your home.
And I think, just a success story that I had from the Aussie barbecue was we'd had our snags, we got our beer and wine, and I chatted to Julie for a bit and some of the volunteers who checked us in, and then we sat down under this tree and I was very content, and I'd had a really stressful week at work and I had to go back and still work. And I said, babe, my bucket's full. Like, I'm really happy. Like, I'm good to go. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, no, I'm good. Like, I was absolutely knackered.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there, and then lo and behold, this young couple and another woman sat down right next to us. And my husband, who is more of the introvert out of the two of us, he just beelined. I saw him beeline for this young couple and made a comment.
What are you doing? It's a big cool.
I was like, I thought we were going. Yeah. And he made some comment about the sausage rolls. Yep. And that was the opening. We stayed for 2 more hours.
Amazing.
And I then...
That's what it's... Yes.
Exactly. And then I went and grabbed dinner with the 2 girls on this Monday night, just gone. Yep. And we're singing a comedy show with them at the end of September.
Fantastic.
And it was really one of those moments. I looked at him and I loved him more than ever, just because he knew what I needed.
Like a sprinkling more.
Exactly. Yep. And it was really funny. We were leaving, and one of the things he said is, he was like, God, it's really hard sometimes being the minority, isn't it? And I just looked at him, and he was like, it is one of his favorite things to observe, like, is just the colloquialisms and just, again, that going deeper.
Yes.
It's as soon as you have that shared identity on a number of different domains, the conversation was weaving in and out. Yep. And by the end of it, I think there were like 7 of us just chatting and
quickly bouncing off.
Absolutely. And all the men were Americans. All the partners were Americans and the Aussie girls. So yeah, it was that was a win for me. And that's through your community.
No, I'm so glad, because that is the dream for me, is honestly watching like groups connect up, and we're always trying to work out ways that at our events we can connect people more deeply. And we have had people become housemates, and we've had like really close friends born out of it. And again, you don't move all this way to just meet Australians, but why not? I've fought with that for a while, because when I first got here, I was like, I can't just meet Australians, but I wouldn't have met you because you'd be here, and I wouldn't have met any of the people in the America Josh community if I hadn't moved. So it makes no difference. I feel like they're still just people who, value like coming along. And I think, that filling that quota, filling that cup with like a comfortable familiarity gives you energy for months. You've now got like, you don't have to come back again for a while. Like if I'll see you tomorrow. No, and some people don't. Some people want to fill it up, and then we get people. So the Big Aussie Barbecue is definitely one where some people come out of the woodwork, because we find that there are different groups of expats or transplants. Expat's such a term. I use it all the time, and we get some people that move here and want to stay tightly ingrained with the Australian community. That's how they really identify. And we get some that come to the monthly things or come here and there. And then we get some we find they actively disengage from the audience. But the Big Aussie Barbecue has been great, because we get the people that disengage. They say, I want my once a year. I want to have my sausage. I want to drink a Cooper's beer, and I'm going to sit under a tree and be happy for a day. And they might only be there for a few hours or an hour, but they say, great, like topped right back up. I'm all good. I'm going to walk away back to my, I've got a family and home and everyone that I know is American, which is fantastic. You've really ingrained yourself. And for some people that is perfect. That's what they've been looking for. But yeah, it's that balance and understanding that sort of to your point earlier of what makes a community. It is the spectrum. And I think your husband and my wife are the same. We are they are the quiet ones.
Yeah.
And my wife gave me there's a really good book called Quiet, which my wife recommended. So, and I'm going to stuff this up, but the subline is in the world of an introvert in a world that won't shut up, or the life of an introvert in a world that won't shut up. I think I've stuffed that.
No, that's good.
But something like
we
that.
Get it. Yeah.
And it's this idea, I never understood being quiet. To me,
you and me both.
Yeah. And it's taken a lot for me to say that out loud. Because the big example is when my wife and I go out for a dinner party and I'm having a good time, I want to stay there forever. Yes. I am we're having the best time. I want this night to go on for 12 hours and I want to meet everyone at the table. Yeah. My wife taught me that she is having the best time of her life and then we'll be there for 2-3 hours and she's like, I'm cooked, I'm done. And I would say to her, because she'd say, should we go soon? And I'd be like, I thought you were having a good time. Yeah. And she's like, I am. I've had the best time. Yeah. And now I'm done. My
bucket's full.
And and this idea of the spectrum of people that go into, into a community and being friendly to each other. I've learned from my wife that America Josh, we make sure anyone who hosts our events, they have to welcome everyone that arrives. So you can't just expect people to join your group, even if there's even if accents are loud and everyone can hear that you're the group of people they're looking for, it's still really tough. You need to look up and you need to acknowledge and shutting up. And I realize, the irony of sitting here talking.
Yes, right.
But I've learned to shut up. And my wife is probably listening and she'll be like, he does all right. But I've tried actively to just quieten down, because the amount of voices that aren't heard and the people that are most contributive can be the ones that sit in the background being like, I've actually got an answer to that, or I've been through this and I know how to get out. Yeah. If you don't listen for it, you won't hear it. And it's so important that the community is made up of both ends of that scale, because that's our society.
Yeah. And I recognize myself in that. And usually it's coming from a place of excitement because you want to share.
I want to jump in with my story. I'm just like I did then. I want to be like,
I'm the same. Yeah. And even doing this, watching back on episodes, I'm like, oh, just let that finish, because it's an energy that you get off one another. But I really love that, and that's being considered in events, because also people socialize differently. And so for Dan, he's like, 5 is my prime number. As soon as it's over 5, it can be really overwhelming. With
we need to have a dinner party, because I think
right, very easy.
We've got one end of the groups. Table. Yeah.
And it's you have that recognition of okay, well, I can carry 5 conversations, but he's like, no, I want to have one and that's really, deep and fulfilling. And so the fact that you're considering that in your events and how people, because it can also be so nerve-wracking. I was nervous for my first coffee.
Absolutely. And you're rolling up to a group of people that might be established, might have friendship groups already.
So I think that's, I really admire that. And it's of course, I expect that from you, that level of consideration. Quiet. I will have a look into it.
My wife read it and was basically threw it at me immediately. It was like, oh my God, this. And she was like, it's the first time she was like, it's the first time I've read something that really saw what, she's someone that, it would never be the one to shout out loud an answer, but knew it. Yes. And was being called upon and asked or not even being called upon, just write down the answer and put it in and prove that you know it. I shouldn't have to compete with all you loud people. And there's a value. She loves coming out with me because I'm happy to break the ice and then introduce her to one person. Yes. And then she's like, I'm good. This is great. Yeah. And I think valuing that and listening and I've learned a lot. I think she's evolved America Josh as much as I sort of formed it. All the people that have come, and her especially, obviously she's a big part of it. All of those little contributive bits have taught me a lot. And we do feedback for every single event that we run. We make sure that we've got an anonymous tip line which sounds ridiculous, but people write in and say I came and I didn't like that nobody saw me in the first, or I was floating around, couldn't find you. So we now have a flag that we put up at coffee because people said I didn't know where to go. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so terrible because you've come along, you've taken time out of your day to come along, and I haven't made it easy for you to find it. And I would hate to think that somebody comes and doesn't join and then alienates them and then never comes back because they're like, that was not worth my time.
Yeah.
I desperately want it to be that if you come once and you decide that was plenty, that's fantastic. But you should always feel welcome to join and try meeting someone new.
And those community norms are so important to establish them. And when creating that consistency and like those expectations, it's like, oh, that removes so many of those barriers to entry and people are going to come back again, like you said. You have put so much emotional, physical, financial labor into America, Josh. How do you manage those demands? And are there certain strategies that you have used to avoid burnout? Because you are the center of that community.
Yeah. So again, and my wife's getting lots of shout outs. She's taught me on Friday nights, and this week's an exclusion because we have Friday night drinks, but we stay at home. We hang out and watch a movie, and I make burgers, and we go to have a bottle of wine and go to bed.
Beautiful.
The valuing quiet time and valuing downtime is immensely important.
Yep.
One of the things I didn't realize, when you move, especially to New York, I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get here and have nothing to do because I don't know anyone. I know there's stuff going on, but what I actually realized is once you've started to get the wheels rolling, people go out every night here. So, and it doesn't mean drinks, it just means there are things happening all the time. And you will find that socially you will burn out because there is so much to do, and you will feel like in the first few months that you should be going to all of the things. You should be trying to, and you should. There is an element of the first bit you need to say yes to. You need to have the money to say yes, which is one of the first tips we write in America, Josh, is you can't limit yourself at the start, because if you close the door to a few things, it will make the next few steps really, really difficult.
Yeah.
But after that, once you've grounded and you've planted the seeds and you've started to find your rhythm, you need to learn to say no, because if you don't, you will burn out fast and you will find that there is always a new friend. There's someone in town. There's a family member coming next week. There's and not to mention there's parties happening every single night of the year, and there are bars that have just opened and pizza places that you could try. And so for me, it's taking a quiet moment. And it's also like I have noise cancelling headphones, which sounds like such a nonsense tip, but it is. Sit with nothing playing and just the noise cancelling, and sit for a bit. Yeah. I use it. My dog walks. Sometimes I find I've just got my headphones on and there's nothing playing, but it's just me mindlessly sort of thinking about nothing. I love Headspace. Headspace is fantastic. I'm a huge fan. Meditation is, I am not someone that believes in sort of higher powers, but I think like from a mental health perspective, it's immensely important. Yeah. And then I think for America, Josh, I'm bad at reading. I know, what is it? They never read your critics. I am terrible. I want to read what people don't like. Yeah. I feel like it benefits me, but it also, I'll read 25 really lovely reviews and then one person that says I didn't have a very good time, and all I can think about is
the one negative.
Which is not good, but I think it is learning to roll with that and understanding that there are lots of voices, and I'm still not very good at it. I still sort of brood on it and get frustrated by it, but I've tried to balance my life, and I turn off at 5 o'clock most days, and I like pick up my son from daycare, or I dropped him off at grandma and grandpa's this morning. Like I do think you can talk about, like we were talking before about you need the tangible things. You can talk about work-life balance until you're blue in the face, but if you don't actually do it, you will forever be saying like, I value work-life balance, but like, I do have a lot to work to do. Whereas I will sometimes say like, I should be doing this, and I absolutely should, but like, no, I've decided to stop. So it's tough. There are lots of people will demand, despite the fact that America Josh provides free advice, you'll still get emails from people saying like, why didn't you answer my question yet? And sometimes you've just got to be like, some people won't like that they have to wait, or some people might not get the answer they wanted, or so it is kind of, again, it's like the moving, you have to accept that there will be some people that just will never be happy. And I again, my wife would laugh because she'd be like, you don't accept that at all. But I do want to, I'm a people pleaser. I would love to think that I could try, and I do, but I am getting better at understanding that sometimes you just have to be like, that's a lost cause.
And that's your growth curve, right? There's going to be so many learning opportunities. You know, as said before we started the episode, like progress, not perfection.
Yes. I love the enemy. What is it? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Exactly.
I love that saying because it's you could drive yourself insane.
You would never start the thing if you wanted it to be perfect.
Yes.
And I remember, I think I might have said this on another episode, but I had a friend back in the day who was like, you want to be introduced to a thing and jump over the learning part and just be good at it. And right. And it's like, and I very much kept her in the back of my mind with this process because there is always going to be critics. And I think if you can take the feelings out and just focus on the facts, like, okay, is the suggestion they're making factually relevant and helpful? Then okay, take the negativity out and improve however you can. But I think, yes, there is an empty bucket element. Like people will take as much as they can. And I think it goes back to that original point we were talking about when there feels like there's so much pressure on this thing and you find a resource like yours, you can't just enjoy the fact like, oh my gosh, there's there wasn't like, imagine the world before America, Josh. And it's like, be appreciative of what you have now. But I think that there is that full spectrum of consumer.
Yes.
There are people who are so incredibly grateful and, you know, use the resources to the people who are like, I still want more tailored content.
And you do learn very quickly. There are these, the buckets of people I've so quickly now been able to identify like, I know what this question is coming from someone. For me, the big demand I make of people is you have to do your own research.
Yes.
Don't skim my article, read it because I've probably answered it. I promise you, especially in like these particular topics.
Yeah.
Don't skim it, read it, then do a little bit more. And if you can't find the answer, I will go to the ends of the earth to answer your question. I love finding, as I said before, I love the red tape. I love following through. But do not come to me and say, how do I get an E3 visa? Because I'm like, I have literally 100 articles. And I'm using literally properly. Like there are literally 100 articles that talk about this visa and the nuances of it. So if you haven't given me the respect of taking all the time that I put into that, then you don't deserve my respect in giving you an answer. And I will sometimes just shortly respond with a link to an article and say and they say, well, I looked on your website. It's like, you didn't. I know you didn't. You didn't. Like, come on. So I think it's that mutual respect. It's that acknowledgement, like being open to people and being respectful of people is so immensely important to, community and life. And like, I'm not someone that's spiritual, but I do believe that like doing good fosters good. Like it grows. If you put sort of work into being contributive to a community or a closed network, it will come back. And
absolutely.
It does come back in tangible ways. And it's not sort of spiritual. It's more just like people will say like, Josh was really helpful. I wouldn't mind going a little bit out of my way to try and help Josh. And that's sort of what I love. I love putting it out there.
Yeah. And it is a testament, you know, in the relatively short time I've been involved, it's very much been, you give and you see the community that you've created around you and to see how other people within your community interact with each other.
Yes. Yeah.
Not, like when in your absence, I think is a true testament to what you've created. Yeah. What's next for America, Josh? Like, do you you said, you know, very early on in the episode, like you had a vision of how you wanted to see it. Has it exceeded those expectations? Have you got new grand plans that you might be able to share or a vision?
No, so it's especially poignant in time. So America Josh was created purely as a resource online.
Yep.
There was not going to be events. None of that was in mind. I have a IT background professionally, so I make websites, and I thought this will just be a perfect encapsulation of my using a skill to provide to a group. It has obviously grown and flourished. Not spiraled. Other way. It's grown immensely from what it originally was. It's only in the last sort of 3 weeks that I've really been like, what is this?
Yes.
And I talk about America Josh a lot and I love writing about it, but I was like, what is it? It's an online community, great. It's a physical in the real world community. It's an online resource. But what is it that it's what is the mission behind it? It's still got that sort of, I want to make the first 3 months, 3 weeks. Cause if I can compress like a lot of what you learn, that is still there. The mission for helping people will always be there, but as it evolves, it does, like I get people reaching out saying like, we'd love to do this initiative with you, or, you know, we're going to start an Aussie wine club so you can get wine delivered to your door, which I was like, I love this idea.
Yes.
But I'm like, so are we an Australian organization? Like, it was never going to be an Australian thing.
Yeah.
That was not the point.
Yep.
Are we now more Australian? Like, so it's evolved a lot, and I've loved that sense of being able to sort of chop and change, and but it's not from a business perspective. I've got to put the other hat on and be like, this is not a functional way to grow.
Yes.
Sort of throwing grenades in different areas and doing fun activations is fun, but it's not growth.
Yes.
So I've
true.
definitely tried to think in the last couple of weeks to pare back and say, what are we actually doing?
Yeah.
So I think there's the personal element will always be like the events, you know, things like the Big Aussie Barbecue we've really set up as a flagship part of what we do.
Yep.
So that is core to the coffees, the monthly events, and the barbecue are the three sort of divisions of that. Online, there'll always be free resources. It's been immensely important to America Josh. I don't want to put it behind a paywall. I don't want to put it behind membership. I want it to be, if you've got time to do the research, that is your thing.
Yep.
I think there are two spaces. There's a more handheld version of that, which I've been working on for 7 years. I've been saying like a guide is coming. It's tough because I am the perfectionist that wants it to be something that really is groundbreaking and worth someone paying for.
Yep.
But that is one space that we really, really keep getting asked. Like, people want to say, I don't mind paying, but I want to be just told what's next.
Yes.
So we are looking down that path. And then the other one is like business is another big space that we get a lot of businesses now reaching out saying we want to expand to the US, or we want to, we've got this idea and we want to know how to get there, and not only the people that are coming with the business, but the business itself.
Yes.
So we're looking down that space is the sort of other big arm of America Josh now. Because we're sort of, again, listening to what people ask for.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one for me though is we set up a buddy system in, I think, 2021, which is that you can enroll your information and then you get matched with someone. And we saw such a great success from that. So it's something that I haven't done since because it took a lot of work and it was sort of labor intensive and it took a lot of time. But I'm hearing still from people that got buddied up with someone that they really paired with and matched well with. So that's the kind of, like, I want to pick a few initiatives that we really pick up and flourish with, because I think there are all these online communities, and you can, like, you know, Bumble BFF is a good example. Like, you can find, there are good ways to do it. And I think there's an audience here for that kind of thing. So there's a few sort of, irons in the fire.
Yes.
And I love hearing from people and finding out what they would love. And we've built tools and we've adapted to how the community asks questions. But ultimately, I'm in the spot of working out, like, just as much as everyone else. It's trying to decide, what does the next 5 years look like? Yep. And for me, I run a digital marketing company and that's my bread and butter. So is that my bread and butter forever? Or is this, you know, I think America Josh is going to be where I pivot a bit more, because I think there's such I love standing there especially at things like the barbecue where it's like 550 people coming and eating sausages it's cool.
That's your day. That's your day job. Like, can you imagine being like, this is?
I make a living doing this.
Yes.
I think it's a finite. I don't want to push on people. We've got an event every Tuesday and Thursday and Friday. I don't think there's a capacity for that. So, what can we offer that would be helpful to the community, that could give back to us, that could, like, and it is writing it all down. And Julie has been a great soundboard. I've obviously got my wife at home, Stacey. She loves hearing about it, but, like, it can't always be like, you know, every single question goes to you. Sometimes it's nice to have a family division from your business. So for me, it's having an employee, a staff member, a team member who now I can sort of throw ideas, and we have these big long chats. And we come up with a sort of, very funnily, on the side, we're coming up with events ideas and realized that you can create. We went back and forth for 20 minutes, a half an hour, and we came up with a cool idea for an event. And then Julie asked me, would you go to this event? And I was like, no. And it was this realization of, like, we're inventing stuff for who? We're pretending like our audience is something. So our big thing is, like, let's shift back to, like, what are the people actually asking for? So we're doing more. We've built actually an advisory group for America Josh. So the America Josh Advisory Group, and we've brought on some really involved volunteers who have given to the community their own time over the past 5-6 years. And we've said we want to give back. So they'll go actually up on the website shortly.
Brilliant.
And become part of our family. We want to promote their business and their families and their lives or whatever they want, and use them as like, have you got ideas? What does
Yeah.
it look like from the other side? I've been in it now so long. I've moved here 8 years ago. I've lost the newness, the beginner element. So like, can we involve people that are brand new to the city or have got different perspectives? And I'm a white guy from Australia, so I don't provide context for a woman in New York, let alone a woman of color in New York, or let alone, like, there are so many voices that I don't reflect. And I am hyper aware of that. I am trying desperately to work out ways, and we employ writers to write content and add elements, but it's difficult. So we need to actively plan to grow in that space. So see, I could, like, this is where I get carried away. Then I'm like, oh my God, there's so many things I could do.
But it's like that, I think, again, what I keep hearing through everything that you speak about are those core values. And that is, you know, in terms of community, you could say, you could be a completely different person sitting in that chair and being like, I this, I that, I that, and and I came. But it's like the fact, you know, the researcher in me geeks out that you've got an advisory group because, you know, very much in the work that I do as a researcher, you know, participatory research where it's like, who are the people that I'm trying to create content and resources for? It's like, no one's going to use it if I'm not actually, if it doesn't reflect the voices of the person who will be the end user. And I think like that is these networks and rivers that you're creating and, you know, sourcing information from is just, a real testament to the core values and the mission.
Thank you.
And also makes your job easier.
Absolutely, it should, yeah.
Because it's like, well, it's not. It's a whole systems approach rather than just you doing it on your own. It's exactly a no-brainer.
Right. And I think a lot of the time we perceive, like, including, like, there's a narrative that is including all these voices. Like, it takes so much work, but no, it should be like that adds an extra article. Like, for me, from a real nuts and bolts, that adds an extra article that is how to navigate New York City as a woman. Because my wife and my experience are drastically different. And she's a New Yorker, but her lived experience in this city is not mine. I joke when I first moved here, I'd catch the train and I fell asleep on a train after a really fun night. And she's like, I would never do that. Like, that is terrifying. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't, from my perspective, I was like, oh, what a dumb move. From her perspective, she's like, that's straight up terrifying. So you don't have that until somebody says it. And I don't think it's that, like, it's not easy, but it's necessary to telling stories and advising people. It needs to come from a bunch of backgrounds because our articles have adapted immensely when people say that wasn't my experience. When I walked into the bank, they didn't give me that. The person wasn't as polite as they were to you or whatever it was. And then I could add, like, well, this happened to me. I leave that in because it's important that you heard what I did, but also, like, a lot of readers have commented, and you'll see on a lot of the articles that we write, there's a note, an addendum at the end that says, or in the middle of the article, like Tim wrote in or Sarah wrote in and said X, like, because I think that people want to see themselves reflected in the advice that they get, and they want to find. They don't need to join a community, and this is probably my biggest point, is that they don't need to join a community. They need to find people like them, and they make up a community.
Yes.
But this idea of pairing up and having little tribes or little groups that make up a broader community with a mission is what I'm trying to do. I'd love to think that everyone could find a best friend in the American Josh community. That would be glorious. Yeah. And how can I foster that and put you in the right room that you find that? Mm-hmm. That's my dream. Yes. I don't, like, I love the attention. Don't get me wrong. It's American Josh. I put them in. I love talking about it. But I desperately love when I'm not the person that's out the front leading it. I'd love, like you said before, if the community speaks to each other in the same way that I've tried to foster. Yes. That is,
you've done your job.
Yeah, that is so great.
I love that. If you were to give one piece of advice to a new New York transplant that isn't on your website.
Cool.
What would it be?
New transplant advice. So I've already done the headphones thing, and I think I've written about that as well. I mean, I probably haven't written about it, like going outside, like finding nature. It's the volume of this city. It's sort of a similar comment, but the volume of this city gets lost once you've been here a little bit. I think I love Central Park, and I'm very privileged that I live now quite close to it. Finding a spot where you can be alone in this city is so important. We talk a lot about finding community and not being alone, but you need the balance of having time where you even away from family and loved ones and your dog, like having moments where you can sit.
Yes.
And if you like a quiet beer, then go to a pub and sit on your own for 20 minutes or half an hour and just don't do anything. I mean, I've got now a young son, which is really fun and exciting, but it means you've got less me time. Yeah. And I think you need balance, and it's not voodoo, it's not science, it's science. Like you need balance in your life. So I think it'd be finding the thing that zones you out or zens you out, and having the ability to sit quietly. It doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter if it's a park or a bar, but you need that, because you will find that you lose yourself a little bit in a big city. And it's fun to lose yourself for a few months, but you will regret having to climb back, I think, if you don't hold on to it a little bit.
I love that. And I think the spotlight effect of being on your own is all up in here. I think that I am someone who has learnt to enjoy I love my alone time and recharge time, but going and doing things on your own has been something that I've
on your own. Go to a restaurant or
going to a movie. I was like, I saw
Inside Out 1 on my own.
Did you cry?
I did.
Yeah, me too.
And it was me and some, teenagers making out in the back of the cinema. And it was like a noon it was in LA, and it was like noon on a Tuesday. But I sat there, I ate my popcorn, and I drank my drink, and I watched Inside Out, and I had a little tear. It was glorious. Yeah. I'd never done that before in my life.
This is if you're listening and need the sign to go and just do one thing on your own.
Yeah.
I think going to the movies is a good starting point.
That might be okay, I changed my answer.
Yeah. And there are some great movie theaters here.
There are.
The recliner chairs are something I've never seen before.
Full recline, and it's like nap time.
Upper West Side, I think it's 85th. We took my mum there I can't remember what movie it was. And I was laying down like I was in business class on Qantas. And I was like, what is this?
I love it.
I don't see movies otherwise. That's my new standard of movie.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the only other thing I was going to say is I've found, and we talked a little bit earlier about using vocally and verbally getting your thoughts out. Yeah. I've also found that writing, I've never been a writer before America Josh. I'd never written anything. And I've started I use America Josh somewhat as a bit of an outlet, but also privately I write even just rambly streams of conscious.
Yes.
It's helped me a lot, because I think the combined element of the volume of the city, how much happens, how many opportunities you feel like you're missing because you now live in New York, you should be killing it.
Yes.
That's the vibe that you get
the
from
hustle.
a lot of people. Yeah, the hustle culture is rough. Writing it down and saying laying out your thoughts, I feel can also really be helpful, because you will feel, no matter how much success you gain, this city will make you feel like you haven't yet achieved. And I actually saw Tim Minchin on Monday, and it was a fantastic show.
Yes.
And I've forgotten the arrival fallacy. So it's this idea that you're always waiting to find yourself. If I just change this, I'll be at my optimal self. And New York kicks that can down the road forever. You
absolutely.
Can literally win the lottery, but you still don't have as much money as the guy down the street. And you can find a big group of friends, but you still don't have as many friends as the person next to you. So it will kill you if you don't sort of acknowledge that and lay it all out.
100%. And with social media these days, I think that just continues to exacerbate that,
immensely important, but also for moving, it's
absolutely.
so important to find your people and answer the questions, but good God, it's horrific.
And I think to your point, just in terms of what is defining what is arriving. And I think that it looks so, you might obtain those materialistic things or that goal, and then it's guess what? Life's still happening.
Yes. And it happens so iteratively.
And some people might find that success and they're like, oh, it was a 10 seconds of joy, and everyone else is going about on their Tuesday morning, getting their coffee. But I think, it's this city has a way of magnifying those aspects, and writing can really help put it down on paper.
I did a good thing today, or I had a success. I know that there's some fantastic people who talk about writing down your successes, and I've never been why but I now do try and have a little moment to the big Aussie barbecue. I stood there it rained right at the very, very end, which was great because everyone had to go home really quickly, but I cleaned up and I had a little moment of being well done.
Yes, that was, absolutely.
And again, my wife and the people around me are very good and supportive, and they're the ones that will be an advocate. But you should be proud of the little tiny
Yes.
morsel and the fact that you're doing it in a different country after moving and leaving everything behind counts double.
Yes.
if not
And
triple.
imagine what 2017 you would think of
I know.
where you are now. Like that's my kind of
Yes.
go-to is like, what would Emily of 2016 think right now? And
Yep.
like her mind would be blown that this is the opportunities that you're getting or the life
Absolutely.
you're leading.
Yep.
So little M is the little reminder that I typically use because that is, she would be incredibly proud or think, oh my gosh, you got through that. How did we get through that?
Yes.
So, sometimes externalizing those things
Absolutely.
do help with perspective taking.
Yes, and it is tough. You actively need to be involved in that.
Yes.
It's not something that passively happens. You will. I guarantee anyone that moves here and anyone that lives here will know that every promotion will be outweighed by when you get home and there's something else to worry about.
Yes. So enjoy those moments.
Enjoy them. Embrace, sit quietly in your safe space and your happy place and enjoy it.
Amazing. Josh, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really fun.
Where can people find you? Online, in person?
Yes. So in person is always my favorite. We're sitting here
Yes.
and talking in person, and I know there's always the option to
Yes.
do it online, but it is really nice. And so we've got coffees every morning in Central Park at 10:30 on Fridays.
Yep.
We do monthly events that you can find at americajosh.com, and we've got events all over the country now. So and you can find me at americajosh.com or americajosh on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes. Amazing.
Love it.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for having me.
Thank you for helping me stay rooted. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Means something different in Australia. Just when I think this podcasting thing couldn't get any more enjoyable, you throw an Australian person into the mix. Each guest brings a new journey, perspective, and set of learnings, and Josh was no exception. One might say that was one too many extroverted Australians for one episode, or perhaps it wasn't enough. Let us know in the comments. As always, we made random recommendations throughout the episode, and if any of these sparked your interest, they can be found in the show notes. This episode was lovingly edited by Louise, who's ensuring our episodes are smooth and engaging. And if you want to keep the conversation going in between episodes, you can follow us on Instagram for short form content and Substack for your deeper dives. If you like or maybe even loved this episode, please subscribe to New York Transplants on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Your reviews and feedback mean the world to me, and they help grow our community one transplant at a time. Until next time, stay rooted.
Thank you.